Hello, everyone. My name is Leah Brown. I'm Assistant Director for Education here at the Moton Museum, and welcome to Season 2 of our Moton Interview Series. Today with us, we have Sherry Swinson, and we're super excited to have her. How are you today?
I'm well, and I see that the sun has just come out, so even better.
Yes, absolutely. Love the sun. Perfect beside my window here at the office. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Can you just please introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Sherry Swinson, and I'm the Executive Director of Hull Springs. And Hull Springs is a property on the Northern Neck that was bequeathed to Longwood by a 1938 alum, Mary Farley Ames Lee. And it is located on two tributaries to the lower Machotic, which feeds the Potomac, flowing into the Chesapeake Bay. The views are amazing from the property. And we're blessed to have a variety of great water resources, along with about 400 acres of hardwoods and pines. And we have installed a wetlands mitigation bank there to help us with sustainability of the farm. And it is just a phenomenal resource for Longwood.
That's super cool. I didn't know about the wetlands. Do you know how, like, logistically how they did that?
We hired a consultant, RES, and they helped us with the planning and construction of the Wetlands Mitigation Bank. Of course, that is to offset any disturbed wetlands that might occur during construction or development in that watershed. So we sell the credits that offset those disturbances, and it's a way for us to sustain the maintenance and operations of Hull Springs. And that consultant also helps us with the marketing and sales of those credits.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay. So it's kind of like a way to perpetuate the farm along with protecting the spaces.
Exactly. They're conservation easements, one to protect it. And we're also required to plant a substantial number of trees and keep measurements of those trees to make sure they're not dying. The first season that we planted, we had a lot of weather issues and we lost a lot of trees and had to replant, but they're coming along beautifully now. And those are basically in fields that we previously had rented for agricultural endeavors, and we had a farmer who rotated crops of soybeans and corn. So now we're no longer having any kind of ag runoff, not using any chemicals or anything like that. So all of that, yes, it's turned into a healthier land, we hope, and no runoff into those streams.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, so we're going to table Hull Springs for now. And would you mind sharing with us about your role on the Moton Council?
I am the chair of the governance committee, and I have been on the Moton Council, as I think we talked about a little bit before we started, more years than I can count. I really don't know how long I've been on the council, but it dated to my previous life in local government. So that's been more than 8.5 years ago. So I was in economic development and tourism. So I represented what was then Virginia's Retreat, which is now Virginia's Crossroads, a tourism consortium. And I was the representative from that group. And now I represent Longwood on the Moton Council. So I transitioned. Didn't want to give up my spot because I got my heart in it now.
There you go. Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, since you brought up Virginia Crossroads, what is that? Like, how does that organization work?
So it's a tourism consortium made up of, I believe it's 11 counties now and 2 cities. It was smaller than that when I first started. They have expanded, and hopefully because of its success that people are interested in joining. And they promote everything from recreational assets to cultural, historical, and natural resources. And they have in the past just gone over and inventoried each of the participating entities and what resources they want to promote. And then they work together to get grant monies to help fund it, and then each locality puts in money to help sustain the organization.
Okay, that makes sense, especially when you're trying to promote locations and localities. I know, now correct me if I'm wrong, part of Virginia Crossroads is the Education and Civil Rights Trail?
Yes, the
Okay.
Civil Rights and Education Heritage Trail, a long word. That started, I tell you, the Virginia Tourism Corporation kind of nudged the organization and said, you need to look into what other things you have to offer because you are so rich in so many different areas. And so the counties got together and started looking at, what do we have in common? So we started making a list, and we said, wow, look at all of the amazing assets we have as far as civil rights, especially in education go, educating Native Americans, African Americans, women, the disabled, unique assets that other localities didn't really have and certainly hadn't inventoried. So the more we looked into it, the more we found, from the Rosenwald schools to, of course, things like Moton, which was pretty obvious, but maybe under-publicized and not really had been advertised for what it was or what its potential was. So we started doing this inventory and came up with so many different wonderful sites, and we started narrowing them down in what was really meaningful. And now I believe they offer 53 sites on that tour.
Oh, well, that's awesome.
And they've just done an upgrade. I think they've added a couple of sites and they've refreshed all of their markers and all the directional signage. And it's really an impressive trail, I think.
Yeah, I was traveling and I was like, oh, there's a sign. I was like, nope, we need to focus. You have your destination to get to. But it's exciting for me because, summer's coming and hopefully always, COVID ready to just go for many field trips, many excursions within, the region. So with the commonalities, were there any like must-haves for the trail?
Well, Moton certainly was a must-have. It's definitely, if not the anchor, one of. I would say it's the anchor. And I guess the common thread is that all of these sites offered some sort of exceptional education to people that didn't have that offered to them, normally. And I guess the extent that local communities went to make sure that these children were educated and were provided the same resources that other children were. And even, Longwood, when it started for all-female school, that was uncommon back in 1839. And the Blackstone Women's, that's down the city, it was initially for Native American children that, were very limited in what the offerings for education was for them. So there's some real standout sites in this tour.
That's awesome. I didn't know about the Native American sites. So with that particular site, do you have any, what year did that school come about, or what was that process?
The Thon Institute is located in Chase City, which is in Mecklenburg County. And I believe that was started, I think in the late 1800s. And I think it operated until about 1951. And I think 1950, it probably had its greatest enrollment. And I think they probably had about 650 students then and probably graduated about 150, which is pretty significant for a small community like that. So I think some of the buildings were torn down, but there's definitely a wonderful home to visit there now. And the community really rallied and put that back together to make sure that it was remembered. And it's one of the significant sites, I think, on the Crete.
I mean,
But you
that,
have a lot of places to visit
yeah, I'm
within an
really,
hour of
like,
here.
yeah, I'm excited for this. Like,
Yeah.
okay, here's a radius. Let's go on a field trip. Especially like the community aspect of it, with the Moat Museum, the community is the museum and we tell community
Yeah.
stories. So I'm really intrigued about that particular site and how the community banded together to preserve this history, to preserve that story. As a historian, it's like, oh, it's overwhelming the number of narratives we don't know or we haven't gotten to yet. So this is super exciting, especially for me.
Well, and I think it's really interesting how many of us don't realize what we have in our own communities.
Mhm.
These are little treasures that, sometimes it's just a very few people who have kept that place alive. And then to have the creek come along and actually pump a little new energy into it and give it some recognition has really, I think, been very rewarding. A
Yeah.
lot of the sites on the creek too are those Rosenwald schools. So I think they've gotten even more popular to
Yes,
restore in the last probably 10, 20 years.
absolutely. I know there's like a coffee table book coming out about the Rosenwald schools. There's a couple of different like academic books about it. And I'm like, yes, give me all this information because I'm learning more and more and more about like the education in Virginia and then just education in the US in general. Because it's like, yes, education happened, but how did it happen? Who got denied education? Who was given extra resources? Why is that? So there's this whole, you know, bubble of questioning about just education, which should be simple, but it's not. So, oof. Well,
Yeah,
let's use this to
very complex.
segue into Hell Springs. So, how does Longwood use it? Well, first question, what is it? Well, we talked about it a little bit, but I guess in the context of Longwood, what is Whole Springs?
Yes. So I think Mary Farley Ames Lee had a vision and really wanted to preserve that property and limit the development on it. Did not want it to become a housing development, really
Mm,
wanted to preserve the resources there. And I think the first connection might have been with Dr. James Jordan, who went up there for archaeological digs, took
ooh,
students up there, and yes, and he met Mrs. Lee and made a connection, and certainly had a passion for the property and what opportunities he could see that it would afford our students. And it kind of grew from there. And then that connection blossomed. And she decided she wanted to leave that property to Longwood. And it currently has two houses on it, and which students can stay there, students and faculty can stay there. And we are in the process of building a new $1.2 million research lab that's about 3,000 square feet that
nice.
will offer our students an opportunity to do some serious research, and everything from classrooms with fume hoods to
Mm,
processing areas. And we have had conversations with VCU's Rice Rivers Center. They're interested in partnering with
nice.
us to compare the waters of the James and the Potomac to do maybe some oyster research.
Mm,
And we already had a great partnership with VIMS that we're hoping to sort of reignite with this facility. And I think the sky's sort of the limit for other higher ed institutions using our facility, as well as the Westmoreland County Public Schools, which we already have a partnership with. We do a summer camp there, and it's focused on the environment. It's called Lucy, Longwood University Camp for Environmental Exploration, and it's for rising third through fifth graders. And
oh,
we take
great.
some of our liberal studies students and also those in any other department who are interested in becoming counselors there. And it offers them a taste of being educators in the future. And they counsel and teach side by side with certified teachers from the Westmoreland County school system for this 2-week camp. So we didn't have it last year because of COVID,
Mm,
and we're hoping to reinstitute that. We had done it for 5 years, so it was very successful. The children loved it, and we were hoping we might even be able to include a couple of other counties from the Northern Neck. So that's a future hope.
This is so exciting. Like I'm from the Tidewater region of Virginia, so I love me some waterways. And like I know VIMS, went to William and Mary. So it's oh, okay, great, fantastic. So that's a cool collaboration, especially when you think about the number of students who can be involved there and then just like doing research. But I am thrilled for like the rising third graders and fifth graders because I remember doing stuff like that when I was a wee lamb and being like, this is amazing. How do we do this? And then going out and seining and finding. So they call them hog chokers. And it's the why it's a like type of fish. Yeah, it's a lot. But why they were called that is there were so many fish, they would feed them to the pigs and that the scales went down the wrong way, hence hog chokers. Yeah, and I was like, but that's one of those things, like having access to the waterways, having access to learning about like the past with like the practical, this is what happened, and looking forward to the future with this is how we can help. With oysters, like how like they're filters. They filter and like keep the waters clean. So learning that, and then in the context of, well, all the ag runoff and all the other aspects of like what's happening to our waters. This is very exciting because you're cultivating little minds and trying to like, introduce like, yeah, this is an option. This is something you can do moving forward. And then, oh, this is great. This is fantastic. I'm really jazzed about it. Especially like, because there's so many options, I guess, like you were saying, the sky's the limit.
We also partner with Westmoreland State Park,
Mhm.
and one day each week of the camp, we take the students to the state park to do some programming and also to use their swimming pool, because most of these children have never had the opportunity to swim as close as they live to the water. It's been really eye-opening to find out how few are really able to have access to water.
Yeah.
And so we do the seining, and we have the Tidewater Oyster Gardeners Association come in and teach them about oysters, and the filtering process, as well as just starting from spat and how they grow. And we're hoping we're making that connection early in life, that they appreciate the waters and what they offer, and that they'll take care of them.
Absolutely. And it's always important for access, especially in education. Like I know this year has taught me a lot just by like listening to teachers, what they need and what their kids need, their students. It's like, okay, so more resources, more access to resources, more reliable access to resources. So yeah, this project is awesome. Oh, I'm so excited for those little babies.
That's been fun.
Yeah. Okay.
I would say, speaking of reliability, one thing that we have accomplished is that we have expanded broadband access to Whole Springs.
Yes.
You can imagine that in the rural setting that connectivity has been an issue, and we're really excited to have, thanks to the Northern Neck PDC in Westmoreland County, we are now connected through Atlantic Broadband, and we have reliable service there now. And several of our research projects that were being conducted by folks like Robert Marmestein and Ken Fortino and Dina Leach on campus, they have really depended on having some reliable service, which we haven't been able to provide heretofore. But now we're able to do that, and they're doing a LEO project, and it's the Longwood Environmental Observatory, and they're looking at everything from water quality to weather conditions. So some real important data will be coming out of that, and we're excited to be able to share it back on campus.
Yeah.
and beyond.
Like, have you guys been able to do any programs with like a K through 12 audience virtually yet? I feel like we're going to speak that into existence.
Not yet, but
Okay.
we have just gotten connected. So I think once we have that lab facility, yes, that is definitely our intentions.
Oh, that's
About
awesome.
5 years ago, we had a visit from the Hokulea, which was that, I don't know if you're aware of that, but it was this Hawaiian
Yeah, I saw the
voyage,
video, yes.
and they only, yes. And so we would love to do something with classes in Hawaii
Mhm.
back here on the East Coast. So looking at, differences in the waters of the Pacific and the Atlantic, there could be some really cool projects that we could do with school children back there. So we're really hoping that Westmoreland County schools and other Northern Neck's K through 12 schools will take advantage of our new research lab. And we've also had conversations with the Chesapeake Bay Governor's School. So we'd love to have them utilize our facilities.
Yeah, that'd be
So you're
awesome.
right. It opens so many doors.
Yeah. Oof. So much room for collaboration. Okay. So is there anything else iconic about Whole Springs you'd like to share?
Well, I think you and I think I dropped your jaw this morning when we were talking about our
Just a wee bit.
450. Yeah. Our grand old southern red oak was struck by lightning about a year ago, and I'm afraid it finally gave up the ghost during another one of our storms. And we actually utilized the services of Mary Farley Amesley, our benefactor's great nephew is a climbing arborist, and he came and did pruning of the tree. And then finally, icons of Hull Springs is the southern red oak that we estimate to be probably 4 to 5 centuries old. It was struck by lightning over a year ago, and it was a major strike. And we did everything we could. We worked with a professional arborist to come in and take out the dead wood. We installed a new lightning system, a copper system, and we did all sorts of work, fertilizing the tree. We've been doing that for years, just really, really tenderly taking care of this tree. Well, a couple more storms came through and more of the tree died, and it came down almost entirely. So we had to get someone to finish because it was a very dangerous situation at that point. And a little bit of the house was damaged. So the great nephew of Mary Farley Ames Lee happens to be a climbing arborist and offered his services to come in and remove the tree for us, which was incredible. I mean, it's just almost full circle. He remembers playing underneath this tree as a child.
Wow.
And so it was very meaningful for him. He's also like a master woodworker. So we have preserved almost all of the wood. And he has offered to make a 6-foot conference room table for us for one of our new facilities. And then we've had a woodworking guild come in and take some of the wood, and we can't wait to see what they're going to produce. And then our very own Ken Perkins, Dr. Ken Perkins, has he purchased a larger lathe and has turned some bowls. And he did a nest of 3 bowls that are just gorgeous. And he's going to do a set to be housed at the LCVA, one to be permanently housed at Hull Springs, and then one set that hopefully we will use as a major piece of our fundraising effort. So the tree lives on, and in different forms.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because Dr. Perkins also said that he wondered how many bowls had come out of that tree for centuries. Like when the Native Americans were there, surely they used some of the wood to craft bowls. And so it's just kind of a neat history that comes out of there.
All right, so that's super amazing, super cool that you're able to still have this tree exist and, move forward in a different capacity. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about Hull Springs? Anything coming up on the horizon?
So the biggest thing that's happening is our new facilities plan, which has started with this research lab that we've talked about. The other thing we hope to build very, very soon, depending on our fundraising efforts and the success of those, is a new residence hall for students that can house up to 48 students at a time. and or guest. And we want to build 3 faculty cabins. And all of these have beautiful views of the water. And then there'll be a couple of other gathering places for students, a couple of other teaching spaces, including outdoor pavilions. And then we have gotten a $100,000 grant funded study started for a commercial kitchen dining facility. And we are partnering with Rappahannock Community College on that effort, and they would send faculty members over to teach culinary arts on site. And we would be able to feed our students, faculty, and guests while there, and hopefully will become a destination for interesting food sources. I mean, think about the seafood industry there and the agricultural industry, and it's just sort of a natural for us to try to work on that and work with the local community on their economic development efforts in promoting agriculture and seafood. And so we're still doing the study. We're hoping to complete that around June, and then we'll be seeking additional outside funding for that effort. And meanwhile, we're still trying to raise money for all of our plans for developing that camp area. And we have gotten a Mary Morton Parsons grant, a challenge grant from them for $250,000. And we're just about to complete the required match for that, which would be $500,000. And moving on to the next phase. So we feel like we've been very successful, and we want to keep that success going. COVID has certainly made things a little more difficult, but people have come through and been very, very gracious in helping us with this effort. I think they all see the opportunities that it affords not only our students and faculty, but also the communities on the Northern Neck.
Yeah, absolutely. Just thinking about, like food heritage, food's common ground is connector. And then each region is so different. So being able to highlight like, hey, we have this event coming, we're doing tastings, come on over kind of thing. That's very exciting, especially when, sharing information about the Commonwealth, because, Virginia's ginormous. So each region has its own like perks and identity. So that's exciting to be able to meld those two. Well, okay. Well, is there anything else you'd like to share with us, just in general? Because we've covered a lot of topics in our interview.
We have. I think I'm so heartened by the fact that tourism now plays a major role in how people think of economic development. There was a long time where it struggled to really achieve its place in the importance of economic development. And I think that of all places, Virginia should embrace that, because we have so many resources and so many rich assets. So I love working with Moton. I'm so glad to still be involved in this effort. And it really reflects what Longwood's all about in trying to build citizen leaders. And I mean, what could be more representative than Moton and how it gained, all of that it has since its past. So I'm really thrilled to be involved in this.
Well, thank you. We're thrilled to have you. And thank you again for your time. All right, guys, thanks for listening to our Moton Interview Series. If you have any questions, please send me an email. If you have questions for Sherry, I'll get in contact with her. All right, guys, thanks for watching.
Thanks, Leah.
You're welcome.